Okay, great. So go ahead, Sharon. I'll let you and Teresa introduce yourselves, and you can.
Good morning. It's really a joy to be a part of Ask the Expert, as it is a joy to be a part of any of HBA's programs. When Sharon first invited me and I sought out someone I'd like to interview, I chose someone very, very special, and you'll hear from her soon. My name is Sharon Weinstein, and I'm the chair of the coaching, training, and consulting arm of the HBA Ambassador Program. I've been a member of HBA for quite some time. I'm currently in the Montgomery Corridor chapter, and I was in the Chicago, Illinois chapter. In my own business life, I run a not-for-profit called the Global Education Development Institute that creates next generation leaders for developing countries, and SMW Group, a coaching, consulting, and speaking firm that does probably right now 50% coaching and consulting and a good 50% of professional presentations, but in the healthcare space. My areas of expertise are stress and crisis management and overcoming overwhelm, hence the subject. Teresa, over to you.
Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Teresa Britt. I work for Otsuka Pharmaceuticals. I am an operational professional who has worked at Bristol Myers Squibb and now Otsuka in every type of operational function you can imagine. I've been in technical operations, sales operations, marketing operations, and now I do a lot of strategic operations. And I was really excited to be asked by Sharon to participate in this because my expertise with overcoming the overwhelm is very recently focused on the COVID pandemic. And in my current responsibility for the past 18 months, I've been responsible for all of the return to field decisions for the organization to bring our field forces back to the field. And then I've continued to be part of the team that is making decisions on bringing our employees back into the office. I also have a large team that is very varied in life cycles and who have been managing the spectrum of challenges from COVID. So not only have I been involved in having to help determine and make recommendations about decisions on returning to work, which is a very overwhelming thing, but I've also been helping 40 plus people navigate their individual decisions and keep them engaged and keep them healthy, mentally healthy, physically healthy, as we've been traveling together through the journey of the COVID pandemic. My experience with HBA is I had been an HBA dabbler for many years, and it is one of the things that I regret that I dabbled for so long and I did not get involved in things like all of you are doing today, carving time out of your day to spend time with other women and to learn about topics for your own self-development, whether it's professional or it's personal. I became active in HBA about 3 years ago when Otsuka became a purple sponsor. And I have been one of the 2 leads who have brought HBA into Otsuka. We have a significantly grown membership, and it's just been a tremendous way to bring a community of women together. And it's been very rewarding. And at this point in my career, I'm really all about trying to have women start earlier. Don't wait like I did. Mm-hmm. And so it's all about trying to help women earlier in their career get the benefits of that HBA community. That's where my passion is with HBA. And I'm excited to be here with you today.
And I feel that passion in your voice, Teresa. The first time that I spoke to you, I had the aha moment that this was going to be a great session because of what you bring to the table and because of your passion for personal and professional growth. That is so important, and each of us has a unique opportunity to really allow others to shine, to see them grow and to see the rewards of our efforts, but to also see the rewards of their efforts through the Ambassador Program. So I'm super excited to be chatting with you today and to be sharing your message with our group. Let's start with the whole concept of the pandemic. If you're working off-site or your bricks and mortar location has closed, you are not alone. So much has been taken away from so many people since the pandemic began. Everyone went online. Think about it. Global internet activity increased 25% early in the pandemic in mid-March of 2020 when the world seemed to be in lockdown. The internet served our social and entertainment needs, but also our informational needs. With no water cooler chats at the office or impromptu conversations with friends, where do we go for information? We go online. And the pandemic-driven shift to mass remote work has had its fair share of challenges as well, like it disrupted work and life balance and widening communication gaps. And despite that, many employees have come to prefer the flexibility of working from home over the rigidity of working from a shared office. We live in an uncertain world. Things have changed and will continue to change. One of the concerns that leaders have right now is they're being forced to make decisions with incomplete information. When will businesses reopen? When will patient surges peak in a particular area? But that's not the reason to stop communicating with your teams. So, as a healthcare professional, I go to the WHO for my advice, for my source of information. And I was smitten with the 3 C's as defined by the World Health Organization: crowded places, close contact, confined and enclosed spaces. What I'd like to do, Teresa, is to call on you to please address those 3 issues, start with those 3 C's, and how did you handle them?
Yeah, Sharon, those 3 C's are what we're really trying to focus on and figure out how did we help initially our field teams return to work when this is exactly what we needed them to avoid. There was a need for our field organizations to be able to go back out, and they wanted to get back out and do their jobs. They didn't feel that they could be effective doing their jobs virtually, but their jobs take place in crowded places. They are in close contact with their providers and the stakeholders that they work with, and they're also in confined places. They're going into small office buildings. They're in small reception areas. They're needing to be in little back rooms to drop off samples or have conversations or do presentations. All of these were things that were challenges. What we did at Otsuka was we really focused on 3 things, and these were our grounding principles. Was we wanted to take care of our employees. So despite employees maybe wanting to go out and be a little more adventurous than we were ready for them to be, it was up to us as an organization to put their care in the forefront. We also had to think a lot about concern, because people were on varying places in the spectrum of where they felt. Some individuals were very concerned about their health, about being in the 3 C's, or afraid to bring something back home. Other individuals weren't very concerned. So we had to really be balancing that level of concern and not over-index one way or the other, because we wanted to keep an engaged workforce. And the third thing is we needed to think about how we were going to change. How would we change the way we are doing business in order to still be able to be mindful and to put the care of our employees in the forefront? So there was a number of things that we did partnering with a group of medical professionals. And as we navigated through the COVID pandemic, we took baby steps. And these baby steps had to do with using data, using data for decision making, getting expert advice, but always coming back to the 3 C's of caring for our employees, understanding the concern levels vary, and also thinking about how we would change. So part of the change was to balance in-person and virtual interactions steadily and carefully over time, with putting the right precautions in place, such as wearing PPE, that was a change. Being socially distanced, that was a change. Certain events stayed virtual, that was a change. And as we navigated this from June 2020 to now, we have been able to very successfully move through change and balance concern, but also be very caring for our employees.
And that's a huge move. So let me ask you a question. You talked about the baby steps that you took. You talked about a pivot. You talked about a team. You talked about the people involved. And of course, back to those 3 C's again. You know, would you say that you had what some of us would refer to as a war room in terms of response? And how did you assemble the key voices, the people within your organization? And that includes people on a professional level, as well as people who keep the bricks and mortar running. You know, as the leader of that group, as the pandemic point person, you're in constant contact with perhaps government officials and others. You know, how do you know when to do the right thing, how to keep your people healthy and safe, and who was involved in terms of those voices?
Yeah, that's a great question, Sharon. So it was a very broad team. So I was the lead for the field arm, and our field arm comprises of 8 different types of teams, everything from sales representatives to our medical science liaisons to our government affairs individuals that are out there that work with the national and the state arms of the government. So what we did was we pulled experts from those teams. We had representatives from each one of those teams involved because we needed to hear the voice of the field. Sitting in New Jersey, we didn't really know what the situation was out across the country because it varies so much. So we needed individuals that would be able to represent not only their teams and their functions, but what else was going on in the country. We also brought on a team of medical experts that helped us understand what did the CDC guidelines mean, help us demystify that. And they also were a sounding board for us as we were taking our ideas to them, for them to challenge us and give us ideas and give us another group of experts. Additionally, we had our leadership team involved, and our leadership team sat on the spectrum of concern also. So they had things that they were wanting us to prioritize and wanting to balance, but it was really a group effort of functional experts, leaders from those teams where we were making decisions to understand how they'd be impacted, and we could solicit feedback so we could learn, because it's an ongoing process getting out into the field. But then it was also this body of experts that we have from the medical community that really gave us confidence in our decisions.
Let me divert for a minute, okay? Let me step back. You're in operations. How did you get to be the point person? And how did you know what to do? Have you been involved in pandemics in the past?
No, I have not been involved in pandemics in the past. What I have been involved in, though, is over my couple of decades of work in the industry, is I have been involved in a lot of very big projects or a lot of very big situations. I've done a lot of work in systems. I've done a lot of work in operations where things happen. You have a very big project that has to happen in a very short period of time. That can be very overwhelming. And you have to be able to sort through what things are, prioritize, use data, use experts, use a team to help you figure out how you're going to get there. I think the reason I was asked to do this, Sharon, was one of the things that we demonstrated when everybody remembers March 13th was the week before March 13th, we had a national sales meeting where we had 1,000 people in, I believe it was in Dallas. And we came back, we had about 500 people in Dallas. We were getting ready to come back for a national sales meeting, and we were all told we had to stay home. We had 1 week to turn a national meeting, which was a big training event. It wasn't a big party, it was actual training. We had to turn that into a virtual session. And then we had to take our 800 field representatives and move them into a virtual selling environment. So there was a time period in there for about a month where my operations team had all those responsibilities. So I was at the forefront of that, helping the organization navigate through flipping a meeting virtual and then having 800 people be able to sell virtually. And I think with that, the organization saw a good continuation, that I was already kind of working with I was working with this, and it made sense for me to kind of continue in that leadership opportunity. It was a tremendous opportunity. It's very scary, very tremendous, big opportunity. I had never worked with all of those field teams before. I was very, very familiar with a couple of them, but I didn't know all of them. And it was a wonderful opportunity to work with a very broad group of people and support the organization and the teams in this way.
And sometimes we don't really understand how to overcome that overwhelm until we're in that place. I've dealt with crises myself. I was in Moscow when the Russian White House was burning. I was in Tiananmen Square during an uprising. I evacuated people from the Russian White House to a field hospital who had been shot. And I also, when a plane lost fuselage over Siberia, helped the people who needed to remove themselves from their initial plan to go to Japan and somehow get to where they needed to be from Vienna, because the plane landed in a totally different direction. So I've been in those kinds of places. Many people say they don't want to travel with me because I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time. I totally get that, but I know what to do. The idea here is knowing what to do. You stepped up, you rose to the occasion, you created a plan. One of the biggest challenges that we face throughout the pandemic and throughout our professional lives is that of communication. How did you communicate the need for change? How did you get buy-in from the people on your team, both those key voices who you initially assembled, and all of the people and all of the different sectors who needed to also rise up and go with it?
Yes. So Sharon, I've never had those type. Your stories are amazing. Those are wow. I feel overwhelmed just hearing about your stories. But you're right. Communication.
I'll invite you next time.
I'll travel with you, and then I might have a story too. Yeah, communication is key. So one of the first things that I did was I did a lot of listening, because I'm not a pandemic expert. I wasn't an expert being in the field. I wasn't an expert on the data. So the first thing that I did was I needed to do a lot of listening. But before that, I needed to understand who the players were going to be, who were those important people that were going to be able to get us the information that we needed. So the first thing I did was I took some time to think. I didn't jump into action. I took some time to think. I tried to make a list of the people that were going to be important to make this successful. I aligned with my leadership on, are these the right people that I should be talking to, and then I asked them, who are going to be the decision makers? These are the folks that are going to be helping to form recommendations, but who's really going to be the decision makers? So I tried to understand what that framework would look like. It was what I could control. I can't jump in and take action, but what I can control is I can control identifying who are the right players and how are we going to operate together. And then once I knew who I was going to operate with, then it was a lot of listening to how people were feeling, trying to understand what the role was, because putting everybody on a Teams meeting to do their job didn't work for everybody. Maybe it was going to work short term, maybe it'd work long term, but we needed to understand that the answer was not going to be the same thing for everybody. One shoe was not going to solve this within our organization. So from a communication standpoint, we did a lot of listening. We brought all that information in. And then what we started to do was we started to talk to our experts. So we communicated what we felt our situation was to the experts, and we explained to them what the challenges were, and we identified priorities. That was one of the main things I did, was understand what each team's priority was, so that we weren't trying to do 100 things. We were trying to tackle key things that we felt were important, not for Otsuka as a company, but for our patients. So this was how we were communicating: listening, understanding. We would then pull recommendations together. We would go to the experts. We would listen. We would understand. It was very iterative. And then we would come up with our plan and our ideas, and we would then present them to the leadership team, where again, it was very iterative. We created a very iterative process, which allowed us to be very stepwise in what we did. So we didn't jump out with something and then have to pull back and retrace our steps. That was very important for us, that we didn't want to send folks in a direction and then pull back and break the trust. building trust was very important, and the communication piece and their iterative process was fundamental in building trust.
And trust is a huge commodity. So address, if you would, the messaging to your team, to the staff downstream, downline. Okay, how do you know what to tell them and what to tell them when? When they ask difficult questions, what are those responses? How do you build them from a central core so that when messaging is disseminated, it's disseminated to everyone and that they're all singing from the same sheet music at the same time?
So for me, trust is about transparency. And you don't have to, there are going to be times where you can't tell everybody everything. But we should be transparent about the fact that people are working on it and that we're just not at the point of telling people certain things because we don't want to backtrack. So I think that's, for me, Sharon, and that's a lot of what we did in our messaging. Was we were very transparent about, there is a team, we are trying to get to here. We were very transparent about our process, is probably the best way to talk about it. We were very transparent about who was involved. We were very transparent about what we were trying to achieve. And we were also, very direct, and we said, when we make a move, it's going to be a move that we feel is going to stick. We don't want to have you starting and stopping. So for us, a lot of it was around transparency and about being and what we could communicate, being very clear, and we were very frequent. I was probably presenting to the field along with their leadership teams every other week. Our leaders were out there every other week, every third week. There was a lot of communication, so we kept our teams engaged, and they felt that they knew what was going on, even if they didn't have the big picture. They knew there was a team working on it. They knew where they could go with their questions. They knew there'd be an opportunity for them to at least get their question out there, even if we couldn't answer it yet. We provided a lot of forum for feedback, and we provided a lot of forum for interaction.
So for a lot of those who are listening today, the kitchen island became the core of everything that was going on in their homes, whether they lived alone or were part of a large family unit or an extended family unit or people who had come together just for safety. At that island, they were doing work, there was homework, there was meal prep, there was something else, there were telephone calls, there was stuff, there were pets. We all saw them, pets on a keyboard, little kids on a keyboard, lots of things happening. A lot of people tried to do a lot of things. And I think that the biggest challenge was not knowing when the day started and when the day ended. So it almost seemed as if what would have been a 9-to-5 job, if you will, although I don't know that there's ever any such thing. I used to work 100 hours a week, 3 countries a week. So I totally get the number of limits of hours in a day. But if you're starting at your island at 7 a.m. and you're still there at 11 p.m., something's wrong with that picture. And when do you separate what you brought home from work to do, or what was your work assignment, or what you needed to complete, or what project you're working on, from all of the other people who are grasping for your attention, who need you to be a part of their lives and a part of their own processes? What would you say to people who say, how do I move beyond that?
So I would almost go back to kind of saying you have to think about what you can control in your environment. So instead of being overwhelmed about it, what I tried to do with my team was treat everybody as an individual. And again, we did a lot of listening. What's the situation you have at home? It's this. Okay, how can we help you? Actually spending an hour on the phone or half an hour on the phone, letting somebody just talk through the challenges that they're having. And it was amazing, just providing a forum or providing a safe space for somebody to say, this is a situation I have at home and this is what I'm trying to balance. And letting them have a sounding board to talk through it. It was amazing because then you could kind of say, okay, how can I help you? What are the pieces that we can help you control? What are the things we can do for you? And it was amazing how you could almost go employee by employee and help them figure out. Some employees wanted to start work from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock and they needed a break. And we let them compartmentalize their work throughout the day. Other people negotiated the spare bedroom with their husbands and their wives on how they would alternate time. But the way we did it was it was very simple. It was to listen to each person individually and allow them to kind of understand what their situation was and to help them figure out how they could navigate that, and to be very, very supportive of them, not to put any type of a broad brush expectation. At one point we were doing that, at one point we thought, oh, it's good to have a team meeting at 4 because it's at the end of the day. That was the worst time for people because everybody was coming home from school. And thank goodness somebody said, Teresa, this is a terrible time. Could we do it at 10 o'clock in the morning? 10 o'clock in the morning, the kids are all online doing their things, and I have 30 minutes. I'd love to jump on a team meeting with a cup of coffee. We made a lot of adjustments like that, but it was through asking questions and listening, and really kind of figuring out how we could compartmentalize and how we could kind of control what we could in our environments. I might be oversimplifying it, but it was that was kind of how we went about it.
So, and I appreciate that. Especially the 10 a.m. meeting, that to me sets the tone for the entire day and puts people on a positive spin for the rest of their day to complete their work. I like that idea. I like it much better than a 4 p.m. meeting. What do you think are the issues now? And can you pivot with us into what people are feeling now within your organization?
Sure. So I think the issues now are people have been home a lot. And at first it was hard to work at home because it felt weird because you were used to getting up and going into the office and you had your routine. Now people have created a new routine at home. And with that new routine has come a lot of flexibility. Don't have to get in the car, don't have to drive. There's a lot of those things. And so that is one of the biggest challenges that I see we're facing right now is having people want to go back to the office. And just there's a lot to it. There's a lot of expense, there's a lot of time, there's a lot of those things. And I think that's one of the biggest struggles is people are having is kind of breaking that new routine. I think organizations have to find a way to show more value in going back to the office, but I think that's one of them. I think the other concern is we're still in the middle of the pandemic, and people, let's go back to care and concern. People have concern. The concern is on a spectrum right now still. On if I go back to the office, am I going to be safe? I might be vaccinated, or maybe I can't be vaccinated. And what is that situation going to be? I've got young children at home. I have elderly parents. So there's still that lingering concern on health that is still there, that isn't going away. Those would kind of be the two things that come to mind for me.
And how will you as an organization accommodate those needs?
So what we're doing is we are looking to, we are working to accommodate. We have not solved it, that we've not cracked that nut yet. What we're doing is we are encouraging people to come back into the organization, to come back to the office when it makes sense. And there's times when we do need to work together in person. Workshops, certain types of projects really need that in-person interaction, and the company's encouraging that. But at the same time, we continue to have a focus on care and concern as we're trying to navigate through change and coming back to the office. But the health of the employee is still at the forefront.
Have you seen initiatives in which those who would ordinarily be drained and say, oh my heavens, my plate is full, I couldn't take on another thing, perhaps move in another direction and take on new things, different things during the pandemic, yourself included?
Yeah, I have seen where people have definitely kind of looked around and said, wow, I'm home, I have time I didn't have before. Maybe I know I personally was reflective about 3 or 4 months in the pandemic, and I realized I was watching way too much Netflix with my husband. And I thought, wow, at the end of the pandemic, how am I going to look back on how I spent this time? And so there was a couple of things that I know that I personally did. One of them was I had always wanted to get back and start going to the library and start reading again. So I went out in the middle of the pandemic and I got my Manalapan library card, and I started reading again. And that brought a lot of enjoyment. So that was what I did on a personal level. On a work level, what I did was I started to get even more involved with the team and more involved with HBA and trying to think more about the employees and how could we help them during this time. And it became a real passion for me to try to help folks strike that balance, be more available to mentor, take those late evening conversations if that's what it meant for people to kind of talk about what's going on. So that's what I did, was I delved more into the people side of my job. And then I also dove into re-engaging with something that I loved, which was reading and educating myself on the professional side, on the personal side.
And that's really exciting because those individuals you've been mentoring have gleaned a tremendous experience as a result of that relationship. So why don't we talk a little bit about two things. Number one, what do you do to avoid overwhelm? And then you and I had chatted about relationships and recognition and more. Let's talk about that.
Sure. So for me personally, what do I do is, and I've said it a couple times here, I really focus on what I can control. And when I start to feel overwhelmed, the first thing I do, I have a book here that I'll kind of pop up here and show you guys. I am a copious note taker, list maker, things like that. When I start to feel overwhelmed, the first thing that I do is I journal, or I get a pad of paper and I start to write down all the things that I feel like I need to do. And that right there, moving it from my head onto the piece of paper, lets me see it, and then I can organize it, I can prioritize it. And that has worked for me for years. It's a trick that I've taught my kids. I love to see my kids do it. They have day timers and stuff like that, both my son and my daughter. My son likes to whiteboard. My daughter has a day timer she uses. That's how I do it. It's very simple, but I like to take the overwhelm out of my mind and I put it on a piece of paper where I can look at it and I can sort it and I can do things like that. The second question you asked me was around keeping the team engaged.
Yes, around relationships and recognition.
Yeah. So relative to relationships and recognition was, on a personal note, I actually, one of the things I wrote down on a piece of paper was my best friends' names and made sure that I reached out to them and didn't lose contact with them during the pandemic. I also did the same thing with colleagues that I didn't see, scheduled time to meet with them. So I was very purposeful in maintaining those relationships. And then from a recognition perspective, we had a huge focus on recognition at work. Every month we made sure that we got the entire team together. I won't say we went overboard, but we made it a priority to recognize work that people did, to listen to what people were doing, and to just be sure that we were being very positive about lifting people up. We continued to promote people. We didn't slack back on that. We made sure that we kept people being promoted, made sure that people had stretch assignments, all of those things to recognize what people were wanting to do, what they were capable of doing, and also recognizing those achievements that they had.
Well, you shared with me, will you please share with the rest of the people on the call, how many people were promoted during the pandemic in your organization?
In my team, we had probably, I think we had over 10 people that were promoted into new roles during the pandemic. So my team is about 40 people. So we had about 20%, 25% of our team that was promoted during the pandemic. We also had excellent retention during the pandemic where we didn't lose anybody. So all of those things that we did, I think, have helped us keep a really good team culture and have kept the team energized during the pandemic. It was very focused effort, but it's paid off.
And I think it's that culture. It's that organizational culture, both at the top level and within your team, that allows people to feel engaged, to feel appreciated, to feel valued, and to want to be a part of an organization like yours. I was really interested in the concept of journaling. My idea around journaling is we should all be keeping a journal now. What stories are we going to tell our kids and our grandkids someday about what happened during this pandemic? What stories can we tell if we haven't written them down? So I think that that's important. And then, I think I've expressed to you, certainly to others in the past, I have this theory. Yes, it's great to write down all those things that you're going to do. My idea is to separate the must-do list from the to-do list. The to-do list can be extreme. But if each day you took 3 things that you must do by the end of the day, and actually got them done and crossed them off and started off with 3 new things the next day, how would that make you feel? Not overwhelmed at all, not overworked at all, but certainly you'd have a feeling of accomplishment. And so let's look at the whole idea of boundary management. How do you manage boundaries, and why are boundaries important in the big scheme of avoiding that overwhelm?
Yeah, so I think boundary management is really important. And as Sharon, as you were talking about, everybody around that island, right? And that's hard because you've got, everybody around that island, and those are, and if you're at home, those are all people that need something from you. But it is still important for all of us individually to have a sense of our personal boundary and for us to be taking time for ourselves, because especially women, we give and we give and we give and sometimes we don't even give ourselves the 5 minutes to have a good skincare routine at night. We're so tired and we're doing things to we're just dead tired. But as women, we need to be able to establish some boundaries, even with the people that we love who need things from us, because when we're not healthy, our family's not healthy. As a leader, when the leader's not healthy, their team isn't healthy. So being able to carve time out for yourself is really, really important to kind of help with that overwhelm. I think you also want to be establishing boundaries with people that maybe are not the most positive influence with you. This is a time of high stress. COVID has been a time of high stress. Being confined at home and being limited on the things you want to do causes an enormous amount of stress. And so surrounding yourself with people that are going to be positive, that will listen, that care, that have the same maybe fundamental principles that you do, give you that safe space to be, is very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a lot of time. So how you choose to use that time and how you choose to surround yourself is really critical. And a lot of that is around establishing those boundaries and not having that negativity or kind of that negative person encroach into that space of yours. Because if you can carve it out, it's precious. Use it in the best way you can for your health.
So it's not just people who lift you up and make you feel good about being you. It's also boundaries in terms of your time, your ability, knowing yourself, knowing what you're possible of, what you can get done, and what is beyond impossible. There are only so many hours in the day. As much as we try to carve them and reconfigure them and make more out of 24, it doesn't work that way, does it? It just doesn't work.
Yeah,
so
and
what I'd like to do, pardon me?
Well, I was just going to say that reiterates your point, Sharon, on pick 1 or 2 things a day.
Yeah, pick
Pick
one or two things a day.
Yes.
Do what you know is doable and feel great about it. Reward yourself at the end of the day with a cup of tea, with a cup of coffee, with a walk outside, with just breathing fresh air, stepping into your yard or onto the balcony, listening to music, just feeling good. What I'd really love to chat with you now about is this whole idea of the 3 C's and how now the WHO has converted that into something that is totally different. So why don't we look at what those 3 things are? They're not that different because they're things that we've all been practicing, I hope we have, and then go into the questions and answers so that we have time to address a lot of really good questions in the chat. So first of all, the WHO had crowded spaces.
I don't want to interrupt because I really do want to get to this, but I know that some people might have to drop at 9:45. So I was wondering if we could actually just flip it and see if there's any questions from the audience right now. Because I don't have any specific in the chat, but I would love to give people opportunity. Even if you don't feel like coming off on camera, you can just unmute yourself. But out of everything you've heard today, and there's been a lot of really valuable points, so I'm so grateful to both you, Sharon and Teresa. But do any of you have burning questions that you would like answered by our experts?
Vicki has made a comment about so many people want to jump to action, and the idea of listening and thinking before you act is so important.
Yeah.
Certainly, Teresa demonstrated that. Are there questions around that? And if I might, feel free to know that you can reach out to either Teresa or myself privately with questions, should you have them. If you need some other tips and techniques in terms of how to manage, we're here for that purpose. That's why we promote and support HBA.
Yeah, and I just want all of you to feel comfortable asking a question because this is your time, right? That's what we put these on for. It's a
And
small
it's a safe
group.
space.
Exactly. So if anyone has a question, just come off mute. And if not, then I would love to hear from Teresa about the 3 C's.
Okay, so we went from those 3 C's, Teresa. Yours were care, concern, and change.
Yep.
We looked at the CDC's 3 C's, but now we're talking 3 W's. Wear a mask, wash your hands, watch your distance. Please comment on that.
So again, I'm going to come back to control what you can control. If that's probably the biggest thing that maybe you guys take away from this is when you feel overwhelmed is just to kind of step back and kind of think about what can I control in this situation. But the 3 W's I think translate into I can control myself, my decisions around wearing a mask. I can control, give me the other one there.
Washing your hands.
Washing my hands, my goodness. Yes, we all can control washing our hands. And then the last one was watch our distance. And we can control the situations that we put ourselves in and also just the boundaries that we have with people around us. And I think all of those things tie into the C of being very caring about yourself, caring about your health, caring about others around you was one of the C's. Care, concern. We're all going to continue to be on this spectrum of concern. So we need to be able to kind of modulate where we are and manage our own actions with the 3 W's to be able to get back out there and kind of start finding our lives again and be comfortable going back to the office and these types of things. And then the last one is change, is we know that things are going to continue to change. We're going forward, we're going backwards, we're going forward, we're going backwards, and we need to be resilient with that change. But if we're doing the 3 W's and we're doing the 3 C's, we're going to be able to be resilient with that change.
So if I asked you to just share with the team, what are your 3 takeaways?
My 3 takeaways. I've lost my notes here on my takeaways because I showed my book, but
Okay.
The first one is control what you can control. Take care of yourself and be mindful about how you surround yourself and watch those boundaries. So the 3 things that we've been talking about, those are my 3 takeaways. Sharon, do you have anything you'd like to add, or what would your takeaways be?
I have many of the same takeaways. I always like to go on the premise of the 30-second rule. Will it matter in 30 seconds, in 3 minutes, in 3 days? If it's something that you cannot control, put it aside and just move beyond. Do what you can do. But to me, the real key is self-care, because if you don't take care of yourself, you're in no position to do anything for anyone else. And as women in ancient Chinese medicine, women are the earth personalities, the ones who do everything for everyone before they do anything for themselves. This is the time to know yourself and take care of yourself first. When you're better to yourself, you're better to and for others, including your work, including your peers, including your organization.
Yes.
I love that.
Teresa, Sharon, thank you so much. I know we're at time, and I just want to say thank you, Vicki. I agree with your comments here. And Melissa also, eliminating the tailspin. I love that term because it's true. I feel like you've both, Sharon and Teresa, shared so many great tips for overcoming the overwhelm. And I just want to remind everyone that you can reach out to Sharon, Teresa, you can reach out to myself with any questions, HBA related, this topic related, or anything, because we're here. This is women supporting women. These Ask the Experts are here for you. The HBA Ambassador Program is here for you and what you want to get out of it.
And thank you, Sharon, for hosting this program. We really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I want to be sensitive to everyone's time. Sharon, Teresa, and I said we could stay on for a couple more minutes if there are any burning questions. So we will just give you the opportunity, but we told you we'd keep you at 9:45. We already kept you 2 minutes over. So we'll let you either drop off or just stay on and come off mute and ask a question. Otherwise, I hope that everyone has a wonderful day, and depending on what time zone you're in, maybe you're starting your day or it's already halfway done. But thank you for your time today.
Sharon, I'd like to give a shout out to Miss Kelly Bronze, who is a colleague of mine, and she's an HBA ambassador. and she's recently been promoted into a new role. So congratulations to Kelly. It's so nice to see you on here today.
Thank you, Teresa.
Congratulations. Good for you, Kelly.
I would have been on a little bit earlier, but I had another call, but I didn't want to miss this because I thought it was such an awesome topic to cover. So thank you. Appreciate it.
And congratulations in your new role.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Thanks so much, Sharon and Teresa. I really appreciate it. And I personally, I agree with all of you, the self-care and blah, blah, blah. But sometimes we just get so, and so for me, this idea of the control, what can I control and what can I not control? Wow, thank you for that. I'm going to take that for the next week or two and make that my mantra, my personal mantra.
Good for you, Vicki. Thank you.
That's awesome.
Thank you. You all take care. Have a great day.
Have a wonderful
You too.
day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much, Teresa, for the opportunity to chat with you, to interview you, and to be a part of the process with you. Your
Yeah,
messaging was really strong, really powerful, and I know that you've had a huge impact.
Thank you. It was a wonderful opportunity. So nice to talk to everybody. Love HBA.
Same
Awesome.
here.
Well, thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Sharon.
you. Thanks, Sharon. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Yep.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.